T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're listening to The Twisted 10, bringing you original and unique host-created top 10 lists, recorded live in world-famous Cocoa Beach, Florida, with hosts Tach Van Sickle, Adam Poston, Jay Alvarez, and me, Andrea Joy.
And welcome to another very debated conversation into The Twisted 10. I am Adam. I am one of your normal regular hosts on the show. However, I am not your host for tonight. Sitting over there on the lady chaise.
Hi, this is Andrea Joy, and I am not your host tonight.
Tach and Jay are both out right now. However, we should have both of them in somewhere in this podcast. However, we've got some guests that have time frames, and we're sticking to their time frames. First, in studio with me down here is a personal friend of mine, and is going to offer a contradictory side of line of questioning for our list tonight. But my good friend Derek Klein, he goes to university, or he's a student at University of Florida.
Yep.
And you study astronomy and physics?
Yeah, a Bachelor of Science in both.
Bachelor of Science in both astronomy and physics. All right. And are you hosting tonight, Derek? Should I ask that?
I am not hosting.
Okay. All right. So for our hosts tonight, and I want to thank the guys from Hysteria 51 for putting me in touch with these two gentlemen on the phone right now. But from Skype, we've got David. He is from the DITRH YouTube channel, also the Flat Earth podcast, as well as Jaren from the Jarenism YouTube channel. These two gentlemen are coming on to bring us their very own Twisted 10 list. So, hi guys, how are you? Introduce yourselves.
Hey guys, how you doing? This is Dave, and happy to be here. Excited for this discussion, and we'll go from there.
Excellent.
And I'm Jaren, and thanks so much for having us. We appreciate it, and should be fun.
Absolutely. I just finished listening to the second part of the Hysteria 51 podcast, which was a roundtable discussion on the flat Earth, and Tach and I were honored to be invited to be your counters, basically, on that podcast, and that was a lot of fun. You guys brought some very unique perspectives, and we're very happy to have you guys here. Now, I will tell you before we start, I have never, since we've done this podcast, and this is episode, I think, 66, I think out of all of those podcasts for the Twisted 10, I have never once received any kind of, I guess you would call it hate mail, but some of our fans have, because I've teased the idea for what you guys are coming in here with, and I've received both hate and love mail. I've received people who absolutely love this and they love the idea, but I've also received people, email from people saying, man, they can't believe that I'm going down the route of entertaining it.
I have some good news for you if you hold your ground.
Yeah.
I used to do a podcast called Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, and it was a conspiracy show. And in the third year, I started bringing in the flat Earth, and the fans turned on me, threats and people flipping out on me. But now, a couple of years later, I'm getting emails from these guys saying, thank you for holding your ground. I'm a flat earther, and it's unbelievable. You've changed my life. Everything's different. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, but unfortunately, the convergence point is a little too close for you to say.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I appreciate it. So I do want to go on record and first say, Tach and I can't speak for Tach. He'd have to speak for himself on this, but we both work for the space agency. I work for NASA. I'm a contractor at NASA. I do IT. Tach is a contractor at SpaceX. He does security. He's a security agent for them. The content of the show that you're about to hear doesn't necessarily represent our views or those views of the employers that we have that actually pay our bills. So understand this is an entertainment comedy show, and it's built to bring some light to some ideas that you guys have, but it's also meant to just entertain. So what I would encourage the listeners to do, we'll do this at the beginning and at the end of the show, is go out there and do your own research and draw the conclusions. And David and Jaren, you guys said it best on that Hysteria 51. You hope that this inspires some sort of intellectual quest for somebody to go find their own information and draw their own conclusions from it. But I do need to say that my employer isn't making me say this, but I'm saying it anyway, is I don't necessarily hold the views and the opinions that you're going to hear in this show. Those are David and Jaren's and some of their peers in their communities. But all right.
One last thing I just want to throw in there.
Shoot.
If you believe anything that we say, it's just as bad as believing anything else that you've been indoctrinated with. We're just throwing things out there that you may have never have thought of. Then you need to take the time and look into them yourself and make your own judgment.
Awesome. Very, very well said. All right. So I'll go over before we start. Derek, can you give us just a little bit of your background, maybe? So
Yeah,
what
sure.
your focuses are, just so we understand. David and Jaren, maybe we can do just a brief one from you guys as well, just so we know that we've got decent representations from both perspectives, at least in the audience or in the talkers tonight. So Derek, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm not your typical student. I actually worked a normal day job for about a decade after getting out of high school. And then really got bored with the day in, day out, and decided to go to college, pursue some interests I had, listen to a ton of astronomy cast podcasts, learned just everything I could from the layman's level, and then realized there's no way for me to progress any further without actually taking classes in math and science. And that's exactly what I did.
Nice. You kind of live so. For a man to take his life and just stop what he's doing and go and chase his passion, I admire that. That's
terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying to try and make that leap, but it's so far it's been working out really well, and inside I'm exceptionally happy.
That's awesome. That's very cool. All right, David, let's go with you first. Maybe give just a little bit of background on your life and what's led you to here. Maybe just a brief one.
Just a real quick one on 9/11. I saw what happened firsthand without being not on television. I saw the beginning on television, and I knew something was wrong. Started researching into lots of the different deceptions from that to now, and then the nature of our reality was thrown at me. And when I finally started to look into that after refusing for 6 months, I now have a completely new understanding of where we are, who we are, and what we are.
Oh, very nice. All right, Jaren, you want to give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jaren, and my channel is named Jarenism, which, I started that because it was like me-ism, so David would be like Davidism. Really, it just means to no longer believe things because someone tells you. So I was religious when I grew up. Got away from that because I saw it as deception and lies, and went over to atheism and science and saw the same thing there, and really was just frustrated with it all and said, I'm better off just finding my own truth. And ever since I started doing that, my life has been so much better, because now the things I believe are because I came to those conclusions on my own, rather than simply listening to the words of other people who usually don't have your best interests at heart. So that's me.
Nice. Well, very cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all in attendance. By the way, we just had Jay Alvarez come in studio, so he is with us now as well.
Oh, what's up, everybody?
So welcome to the show.
It's going to be fun times.
And, of course, this, Jaren and David, we run our studio out of our home, so our dogs are walking around with a squeaky toy. So here is how the Twisted 10 works. For listeners that are new coming to us from David or Jaren's fans, or if you're hearing this on their YouTube channel or what have you, the Twisted 10 is a unique top 10 list podcast. And it's basically a top 10 list on anything that you want to choose from. It could be from best and worst infomercials to best and worst serial killers, or top 10 time travel anecdotes, or you name it, there's a list out there that you're going to like. So we usually, one of the four of us will host it, or we'll have a guest come in and do the hosting. This week we have David and Jaren from the Flat Earth group. And maybe you could draw an example of David and Jaren before you start of what you guys are versus what the Flat Earth Society is, because there's some positives and negatives as far as what the Flat Earth Society is in comparison. But this week is your show, so this is the point in the show where we basically kind of turn it over to you guys and let you deliver us whatever list you may have.
Go ahead, David. You talk for this part.
So the Flat Earth Society is a government-run, we believe, disinformation site that has ridiculous information on it, and it is meant to capture anybody that starts looking into Flat Earth, show them a couple of things that are interesting, and then throw in a bunch of nonsense so they will just discount it and never look again. And it's very effective because when somebody first hears about the flat earth, they will look at the Flat Earth Society that'll show this capped off disk floating in space, and they say that it rises up at 9.8 meters per second, and that's what causes gravity. Well, no flat earth researcher believes that, or any of the nonsense on that site. Only ball earthers believe that flat earthers believe that. So anytime you hear the Flat Earth Society, know that that is nothing that we believe, and it is just disinformation. So
there's a lot of guys that have been on that forum for 5,000, 7,000 posts for 5 years. It just makes no sense. If somebody believed that strongly in the globe Earth, they wouldn't spend 5 years on a Flat Earth forum just there to basically shoot down any Flat Earth. It's just definitely a propaganda site. So we have nothing to do with them.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that, because Flat Earth Society has come up a ton in some of these circles that we're involved in, and several of the people that knew we were going to have some folks that represented Flat Earth perspective on the show, they asked specifically if they were from Flat Earth Society, and I didn't have an answer. I didn't know for sure. I haven't done all my research on you guys like I probably should have, but no, I didn't know. So thank you for that.
When you Google Flat Earth, it's one of the top hits, and that they're capturing lots of new minds there. But if you take the time and get through that, you'll see the other stuff. Jaren's going to tell you about our list. Our list isn't exactly what you were thinking. We came up with a slightly different list.
Nice. I like it. Okay. Yeah.
Curveball.
Go for it. You guys can start whenever you're ready.
All right. So our list is going to be the top 10 things that science needs to prove or show in some way. Things that we think science needs to explain, or at least give us the reason for. Or the first one, so we'll start at number 10.
Okay, number 10.
Number 10 would be an eclipse video or a video of the Earth from the moon. So there should be a live 24/7 camera shot of the Earth from the moon. So many people still have questions about the eclipses. So NASA really should have done this 50 years ago. But now that we have cameras, 4K cameras, we can hook them up with solar power. We can put it on the moon, fixed on the Earth, meaning it would show the Earth get in front of the sun during the solar eclipse. We'd see the shadow of the moon appear on the Earth during a lunar eclipse, the other way around. And people would see what causes the eclipses. It would actually make sense rather than these terrible depictions and drawings that we get currently. Also, they could send the craft to the moon, and when they do, they could land near the Apollo 14, 15, or 16 site. What that would do is show the rover and the LEM and prove the moon landings. And also, if they stream this footage live, they could sell ad logos to various companies and actually make money doing it. So there's really no excuse for them to not have a camera on the moon showing the Earth.
And the moon also, with one side, always faces the Earth. So it's the perfect place to put a camera to film the Earth 24/7.
All right. I like that. Now, are we going to go? Do you want to have the couple of questions between each one of your statements?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So what I'm going to play in this episode is not necessarily. I'm not going to fire back with questions that I've got. I'm going to let Derek, Andrea, and Jay ask their questions, and later maybe Tach, if he shows up late, ask whatever questions that they've got, and I'm going to try to keep us on somewhat of a time constraint and to do the best to get you guys out, because I know you guys have other plans after this as well. So very first one, guys. You guys have any questions on this one?
Come on, Andrea, you've got a question.
No, I don't.
Would you guys agree with that it makes logical sense, especially because I've told people that before, and they say NASA's got other things they can do with the money. They don't have money to do something like that. But realistically, if they put a 24/7 feed on a website, they could sell the advertising and it literally make money doing it.
All right.
Well, could you imagine what it would look like watching the Earth rise up and block out the sun from the moon's perspective? It would be the highest rated moment on live streaming ever.
Oh, I totally agree. And this is Derek, by the way. I guess I have 2 points to say to that is the first one is who verifies the authenticity of the live feed as you guys are sending it up there, or rather as NASA's sending it up there? Like, there's always a lot of error, or there's a lot of contradiction whenever videos are shown that, that video was faked.
Sure.
Is it just because it's the live stream that's what ensures?
I'll answer that. The answer is filming the Earth with weather patterns and light and backgrounds, stars, if it'll show stars. The hive mind of the internet will tear it apart and find out whether it's real or not. And the reason NASA hasn't faked it is because it's too hard to fake.
Is there a reason the live ISS feed on YouTube isn't good for that?
Jaren?
Yeah, and that's actually going to be one of our numbers, but they don't show a 24/7 video feed. There's not one from the ISS. So
well, they promote it all the time on my Facebook feed.
Say it again?
They promote it all the time on my Facebook feed, and they're like...
Yeah, they call it a 24/7 video feed, but it actually lasts about less than 30 minutes and then cuts out for 30 to 45 minutes when it says it's on the dark side of the Earth, which makes no sense to anyone who's thinking about it rationally.
So I assume they mean like radio silence, like they don't have a satellite on the far side from the United States.
Well, they always say they lose signal on the dark side of the planet. I'm looking forward to the day when we can make phone calls at night.
Well, that'll be awesome.
Nice. I don't think there is a dark side of the Earth, though, is there, Derek?
There's a dark side, but the opposite side of the sun is the dark side if you believe in the heliocentric model.
My understanding of how the dark side of the moon would work in this case, not referencing the album, but more referencing how radio transmissions could not be received once the astronauts on the Apollo missions were circling the moon. That's considered the dark side of the moon because there's zero radio communication ability when you have a planet blocking you. That doesn't.
So that makes more sense. That's more believable. But on Earth, we have satellites all around the Earth, so there should be no reason. That's what they tell us, at least. There should be no reason that there's any radio blockout.
Okay. But who's to say that the video feed from the moon wouldn't be fake? Like, who's going to be the person that says, "Oh no, that's totally real," and then who is the hive mind of the internet that's going to say, "Oh no, they're all full of shit"? I mean, there's no, unless you have a guy waving from the moon and a million people there on the moon with him.
The ISS, to me, I call it fake because they cannot provide a 24/7 video feed. So what we're saying is there's no reason why they can't do that from the moon, in which case it's hard to fake that. You can't fake real-time footage from the moon of the Earth spinning because everything's going to have to match. Cloud patterns, you name it. On the ISS, they don't have to match anything because they show the Earth from the ISS, but from the ground, you can't see it because it's daytime. Then when it becomes nighttime, the time when we're on Earth and we can see the ISS, it doesn't show nighttime from the ISS. It doesn't show the Earth.
So you're saying that I can see the moon, and on the moon feed, I see a cloud that looks like a bunny, which is also in front of me and above me. So that must mean this is really happening.
No.
Because that's so. I mean, you can fake two robots.
What you're saying here is the reason they're not doing it is because people will say it's fake. Well, that's kind of a straw man nonsense argument. Put it up there, show us the Earth. If it's real, then there'll be enough people that's like, yeah, I believe that. But they don't even try because it's not something that can be done and it's too hard to fake. That is our opinion.
But what about the massive amounts of people that are saying the Earth is round now?
Then if it was round, then they would be able to show a 24/7 video feed from the ISS.
But you're talking about a hive mentality ruling this. There's... I guess I don't know. I'm not understanding. You're talking about popular opinion will deem that to be true, but popular opinion now is that the Earth is round anyway.
I think
so. Why is one hive mind more important than the other hive mind?
Playing impartial. Let me take this one real quick, David and Jaren. Playing impartial is as much as I can here. I think what they're referring to is weather patterns like a front that is moving through Florida. Like right now, we've got a tropical storm. If there was a rocket going up, to the moon right now with a live feed as the whole time it's going away from us, then you should be able to see the reflections of that front. Maybe not individual clouds, but you can at least see the front. So I can understand that challenge. That's an interesting challenge to throw out there.
Massive weather patterns. We're not talking about individual clouds. We're talking about massive weather patterns, day and and nighttime, where the line is, where the sun is in the background. I mean, we never see the sun from the ISS. Do we, Jaren? Do they ever show the sun?
Occasionally.
Okay. But again, there's always a big piece of equipment in front of it. So that's what we would like to see from science. They haven't done it. There's no reason they can't do it. If the moon is a place and budget isn't the issue because it can be completely funded by Pepsi and Nestle, I'm sure they would cover the whole thing.
And I think it just your scientific entity being NASA, And you have to understand that probably 20%, if not more, of the world has doubts, serious doubts about the moon landings. So why wouldn't you make it a point to go prove that? And I don't mean with your LRO 50 miles above the moon and showing a little pixel change and saying, this is proof, look, we can see the astronaut tracks, because anybody knows that can be faked. But if you actually landed a craft where the LEM was with the lunar module, the lunar rover, and showed exactly the way it was left, that's something I don't think they can fake.
All right, fair enough. So that was number 10. So let's move on to number 9.
All right, number 9 is in regards to the SpaceX rocket landings. So many people have seen SpaceX and their landing of the Falcon 9 first stage after it goes up 50 plus miles and it gets jettisoned, and the second stage continues on, and then back to Earth or back to a barge comes the first stage. And we have serious questions about that, being that it weighs, usually by the time it comes back to the ground, I think 50,000 pounds. It might be more like 40,000 pounds. An everyday vehicle like Toyota Camry weighs about 4,000 pounds. So that's the equivalent of 10 cars. And we just envisioned if you were to drop even one of those cars from the top of say an Empire State Building or something like that, that we find it to be impossible that you would be able to create a combustion or whatever's going on to expel enough, I guess they call it thrust, reverse thrust or whatever, to have that vehicle stop and not hit the Earth. We don't even think you'd be able to do it with one car. So we want science to show that.
Show us something dropped from a height of a tall building or, out of a helicopter or whatever, even a small model of the Falcon 9, and have it land upright on you can land it upright on a stationary piece of land, flat, let alone a barge in 25 knots of wind that's, pitching and rolling, which they show us. That top heavy thing wouldn't even stand up, let alone land on it.
All right. Hey, Tach, just a reminder, what we've done is David and Jaren are bringing us the top 10 things that they would like to have science prove, basically.
Gotcha.
So it's not all about the flat Earth theory tonight. However, that's number 9 is one of these. So you want to take this one? We're allowed to do interactions between each question, but keep them relatively short because we got to make sure we get them out of here in time.
This is pretty short. So what you're basically asking is you want to see a model of the rocket come back or a truck? I mean, something equivalent. Correct.
Yeah, even something just much less.
Well, how about
what they're saying is happening is the weight of 10 cars.
Right.
And
well, if you come down to Florida, you can just watch the first stage just land. How about just do that?
Well, I mean, that you have to be 3 miles away, right?
Yeah, but that's not as far as you think.
Well, I've seen a lot of video of people who have taken it, amateur photographers,
see video all day long, but until you come
it looks
down
like
and see
a ghostly image that comes down and hovers right before it lands.
Okay, you're judging off somebody's video when you can just come here and just visually see it.
Well, what we're trying to say is even mentally that there's that little flame coming out the bottom, and the rocket itself weighs 50,000 pounds. Okay. So what is being? How does that not blow a hole into the ground?
If you look at the takeoff of any major rocket, the amount of flame and thrust and smoke that's coming out is massive. And on the way down, we're just seeing this beautiful little blowtorch, smokeless flame come out, and it stops it. And these little tiny puffs from the top of the rocket, which are keeping it upright. And we need that to be proven to us. It doesn't make any sense.
It's math, lots of math.
So
too much math that I can't handle.
To summarize this,
it is just math.
To summarize this, I think what they're looking for is there anything in comparison that we can give them that shows approximately the same weight of something that's traveling back towards Earth at the speeds that the rockets are coming back to land, which is faster than Mach 1, which is the speed of sound, which is 768 miles per hour, I believe. Because of we hear the sonic booms when it comes back below that speed.
Yeah.
So is there something that we can give them in a comparison to that they would believe that shows the force of the rocket, of the slowdown rockets, or of those rockets that do the braking in comparison to how SpaceX and Blue Origin also does the same types of landings.
Is Blue Origin doing that too?
Mm-hmm. They've done them out in New Mexico.
That's cool.
They haven't done them here, but in KC, they've done them in New Mexico.
So we'd even accept something stopping from free fall acceleration, let alone Mach 1.
And something even as simple as a truck, a Ford F-150. we don't even think that they'd be able to stop that from hitting the ground by it hovering and slowly lowering itself onto its tires.
Now, in this comparison, or in this podcast, I'm playing more of a moderator, but can I throw one potential out there?
Absolutely.
How about a Harrier jet? A Harrier jet can come in for a perfectly vertical landing, and it could be traveling in a free fall. So whatever the force of the free fall speed would be for a Harrier jet based on resistance, wind resistance, it comes to a complete perfect landing, and its
I'll answer
exhaust,
this.
Its exhaust is very minimal.
So when the Harrier jet lands, it's flying forward and it's being held up by its forward momentum and the wing left. And when it starts putting its thrusters down, it's not free falling. It's literally just transferring the thrust downward, and it's not falling out of the sky and then all of a sudden turning on these thrusters to stop it. So and there, I believe there's 4 thrusters on that, not 1.
All right, fair enough. I'm not a expert with jets, but
it's something we'd like to see.
All I can say is
Jaren?
just come down to Florida and take a look for yourself. That's it. What's that?
Santa Claus? He goes really
Then-
fast and
sure.
lands good.
Santa Claus? Yeah. How does the flat Earth theorist perspective explain Santa Claus? Come on, guys.
I love Santa Claus. He's awesome.
I believe they have the answer on the Flat Earth Society website. There's probably a full page on that.
Ooh, burn! I heard it. All right, you guys want to move on to number 8?
Okay, number 8. To prove the Earth's spin. Because we talked about it on the podcast, and it seemed to me that you guys thought that there was some sort of proof that the Earth spins. And I know one of the examples given was because satellites have to be put into a certain orbit, which isn't really proof that the Earth spins, because there's never been a test that has proven it to spin. And there's tons of quotes from lots of different scientists that go back, Arthur C. Clarke and Karl Popper and people like that. Not that Arthur C. Clarke is a scientist, but that have all stated, and even Einstein, who said, "I've come to believe that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment." We know Airy's failed to prove that the Earth spins. We know Michelson-Morley did. So before we get carried away with all these other things, wouldn't it be important for science to prove that the Earth spins?
And they could do that by putting a camera on the moon and showing us the Earth spinning. Simple. So they could solve, several of our questions with one mission.
All right. So let's turn that to our cast in here. Do we have any answers back for that for number 8?
Hey, by the way, can I say something, Derek, before you speak? I'm sorry. I just want to say, hey, guys. Sorry, I didn't even say hi to you guys yet. I just got here, and I'm already attacking. I do apologize.
It was Pat.
Nice talking to you guys again. Sorry. All right, Derek,
good.
go ahead.
You definitely touched on a couple of things. The Michelson-Morley experiment was specifically to test whether or not there was an ether, whether or not light traveled through a medium. And that was proven false because light propagates through the vacuum of space just fine as an electric and a magnetic field that are perpendicular to each other. So that's not really a disproof of the Earth's rotation. That's a disproof that the Earth is swimming inside of a luminiferous ether, so to speak.
But if they had the little platform on the Earth and they shot beams of light in both directions. So if the Earth was spinning, then the beams of light would have to come back at a different time, and they did not.
That's
which means
not true, because in
not
every reference frame, light travels at the speed of light. That's not gonna. The only thing that changes the path time of a speed of light is if a gravitational wave comes through and compresses the space and actually physically makes the space in between smaller.
So like atmosphere and things like that don't change the speed of light?
The speed of light can be changed by the medium it's traveling through. The idea behind the Michelson-Morley experiment was that light doesn't need a medium to travel through. It can travel through a vacuum.
Okay, this is something that can be debated for a long time. The point is, there's still nothing that has proved that the Earth spins.
So
if you have this giant ball spinning, there should be some way to prove it, and there's nothing.
And there's this wonderful, wonderful thing you can look up on YouTube called a Foucault Pendulum. And what that is a giant pendulum that's just swinging, no mechanical action added. And as the Earth rotates over a 24-hour period, the position of the pendulum wants to stay in the original position that it was in. So as the Earth is rotating about every hour, that pendulum will slowly drift into, and I'm holding up my hands as though everyone can see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I can see it, Derek.
Yeah.
I can see it here.
Thanks, Tach.
Yeah.
Anyways, the swing where the pendulum is swinging will rotate in time with the planet.
So the reason that nobody has used that as proof is because it would work the same way if the sky was moving around the stationary Earth as if if the Earth is moving through a stationary universe. So it can't be considered a proof because it would happen if the gravitational effects or the motion of the sky would cause the Foucault pendulum. Also, during eclipses, and it's been noted numerous times even by NASA, that we're getting a complete reversal of the Foucault pendulum, which seems to me to make more sense if you're talking about the sky as having some sort of activity, not the Earth. Why would the eclipse happens in the sky? How would the pendulum change direction over a course of like 14 minutes? The pendulum changes direction on due to eclipses. So the Foucault pendulum, I don't think in any way can be used to describe the. There's other.
I mean, I'm definitely going to look that up. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it does. We've got an eclipse coming up in 3 weeks?
August 21st. Mark it.
Yep.
How do you know that though?
You can look it up. Just look up reversal of the Foucault pendulum. And
I was more referring to the.
As well.
I'm sorry. I was talking to Adam during that. Like, how does he know that there's going to be an eclipse?
Tax yanking my chains in here in studio.
I do want to point out the inconsistency of saying the Earth is an infinite plane, but then it also rotates.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on. Let's move on to number 7 at this point.
Siete.
Right.
Number
nice.
7.
The science mouthpieces of Neil deGrasse and Bill Nye, and first of all, Neil being the educator that he is and the kind of the face of science, rather than just show up on a Comedy Central show when the flat Earth topic comes up and to drop a microphone and tell people that proves gravity, we think he should do some actual scientific education program to where he could do a Fox special for 2 hours and tell everybody why the Earth is a ball, rather than just dismiss it by saying that it's a failure of the education system, which is hilarious because they're teaching the ball Earth. So it's more of a failure of the very thing that he thinks is true. If you've already taught people that and they don't believe it because you haven't done a good job of proving, obviously, whatever you're trying to teach in schools. And as far as Bill Nye goes, so with Neil deGrasse, we would love him to either do a 2-hour show or to come on a flat Earth channel and have a conversation. It's something that these guys will not do. They will not conversate about it. We think we have our opinion of why they won't. And it's because they're afraid to give anything else any time of day rather than teach. Teaching would be, here's this model, here's why this one makes more sense. They don't want to do that. They want to say, this is the stupidest thing ever. Don't even look at it because ours works perfectly and this is how we do science now. It's not the way science should be done. And Bill Nye, we want him to admit that in his little video about why the Earth is round, that his top 5 reasons have all been debunked. The first one, he actually comes out and says, go to a seashore and find out why you can't see Spain from the west coast of North America, which has to be probably the dumbest thing any scientist has ever said, because we know that things with distance diminish in size, and you're not going to be able to see that Spain from the east coast of the United States would be the size of a pinhead. So it's probably the most ridiculous thing ever said. Second thing he said was take a ship, go out to the sea, and you can't see infinitely far, which again is ridiculous because nobody can see infinitely far, and you're looking through tons of atmosphere and mist and dust and smoke and smog and fog, and of course you can't see infinitely far. Next thing he says, climb a tower and you can't see to the other side of the Earth, which again is ridiculous. That's as if you can see through atmosphere. The other thing he says is that the pics of the Earth from space cannot be fake because just to do the paperwork that NASA has done to send people to space would make faking it prohibitively expensive, which is again one of the most ridiculous things anybody's ever said. And then the final thing is Aristophanes. They tell us about this, and everybody's heard this story of the guy from 275 BC who set up the 2 sticks and the light, and was able to calculate the size of the Earth. But the whole story doesn't make sense. In 325 BC, they thought that the sun went around the Earth. So in order to have that story be true, he must have assumed that the sun was an infinite distance away. If it's an infinite distance away, then anybody intelligent would never assume that the infinite distance sun goes around the Earth in one day. It's absolutely preposterous. Plus, they see crepuscular rays in the sky, We see them and they look clearly like the sun is close, but we're told they're parallel lines. Who would have told Aristophanes that the sun rays were parallel? There's no possible way that story is true. And even if it was true, a close local sun and small would cause the same effects on a flat Earth. So it's funny that they keep bringing it up as if it's proof of a globe when it's absolutely not.
He also says that ships that go over the horizon prove the Earth is curved. That's like his top one. But we've proven, it just goes out of your ability to see, because it gets so small that angle of resolution is something our eyes can't see. But you take out your super zoom camera or a small telescope, and boom, there's the entire ship again that completely disappeared over the horizon, proving that curvature is not why it went away.
All right, you guys put a lot into number 7. So let's see.
Yeah,
I think you started it off by saying that some of what a lot of fans of science call their heroes, like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Let me summarize. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
Adam.
okay.
Neil drops microphones and says that we already know it's flat. Don't look. We already know it's round. Don't look. And the top 5 proofs that Bill Nye always says have completely been proven to be false. So we want them to admit it or show us how we're wrong. That's all.
I think it's pretty fair.
All right.
I don't have a problem with that.
On the line with us right now is Neil deGrasse Tyson. No, I'm just kidding. That's something that we can't exactly debate from here. However, I do think we've got a couple of points to bring up. We can't enforce, at least from our side, we can't defend really those guys.
I'd like to see that too.
I would too, absolutely.
So, yeah.
I'd love to. I think one of the issues is that by them actually acknowledging that, they need to come up with a proof, or they need to appear.
Well, the proofs that they've come up with have been debunked, but they refuse to look at it. I mean, it's clearly, unquestionably been debunked, but they still use them as their proofs.
And we just think science is about education. So if you're so confident in your model, then you would go on a 2-hour Fox show and you would teach us all. That's how you get the truth across. You show it, you model it, and then everybody comes out better on the other side. Yep. Instead, you've got flat earthers who are basically throwing a lot of stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, because there's nobody from the scientific community, because that's why we think it's a religion. They act exactly like religious people would, that you cannot question the dogmatic book of Newton's laws. You can't question it.
I think Derek was still talking.
Okay.
Let's try not to talk over each other. Please.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Tacky starting fights over here. What's going on, Tacky?
No. I want to make sure that we stay on the structure. And
yeah, they definitely are going to be more hesitant to appear on a show or appear on a podcast, whatever it is, because simply by acknowledging it, that leaves open the door that this can be interpreted in that way. And I think that that's what they're trying to avoid.
Well, that's right. Kind of silly. if they just came on and to teach us how we're wrong, that's what their job is, But Neil says his job is to what's that quote, Jaren? My job is to keep everybody confused. He said some crazy quote like that. One last thing is Aristophanes. We're doing a little more research into it, but it appears that Aristophanes didn't appear in any literature until the mid-1900s. There's no old books about Aristophanes. And Jaren, who was the other guy that was in the same village as Aristophanes?
I could find out. I think it's Herodotus or it's like Hieron, one of those guys
Paul
that
or John
also lived in Alexandria and was about 50 to 75 years after Aristophanes and studied the exact same things, geometry, mathematics. And in his books, he never mentions Aristophanes, which is ridiculous. He's in the same city as the guy who supposedly figured out the dimensions of the Earth. It just doesn't make any sense that person would write books where he's referencing many people, but never references Aristophanes. It's almost as if he didn't exist.
We better move on to the next question.
Well, hang on.
You guys got one more question.
Before we go to the next one, Derek, did you wrap up what you wanted to say for that one?
The Aristophanes thing is fantastic. I think that that's one of the simplest ways to show that, if not that the Earth is round, that at least there is a difference in the angle of the sun when measured at different latitudes.
So let me just quickly explain, because this is a simple one. Pretend your desk is the flat Earth. Get 2 pens, hold them, arms width apart, shoulder width apart, pointing straight up, and then get a sun, a light bulb or whatever, and put it 2 feet over the pen on the right. The pen on the right will have no shadow, and the pen on the left will have a shadow. Just like Aristophanes said, it has to be curved. It doesn't have to be curved when you have a local small sun. So you've been indoctrinated to believe that by Carl Sagan and everyone else that's thrown it out there, that is the only way it works, and it doesn't work. It also works on a flat Earth with a close sun.
I've done some of my own research, and I do have one question. So then how high up is the sun?
Well, it's
Jaren?
kind of something that, it's something that really can't be measured, because I don't think that the sun is a physical ball like we're taught. It certainly seems to be like a reflection, just like you would be standing at a beach, and you might be 1,000 yards from somebody else at the beach, and you each would be looking at a reflection come to your feet, but you would not see the other person's reflection. So is that reflection real? Well, it depends. For me, it is real. It's coming to my feet, but I don't see the reflection going to the other guy's feet, but he sees it. So the sun works the same way. It's basically presents itself, or you might call it renders itself, individually for each person.
Yeah, Derek, what he's referring to there are converging lines on the horizon, or the perspective of the viewing of the sun, the reflections of the sun coming to each person. So 1,000 feet away from each other, you're each going to have a reflection that looks to have the sun reflecting to you. It's just a perspective question, and that's a rabbit hole in itself.
Right.
If it's a rabbit hole I don't want to go into, I don't understand how I can hold my hand out and there's a shadow, and we all agree there's a shadow under it, and there's only one sun because of that. I'm not following you where there's multiple suns or one individual sun per person.
Each of those people would hold their hand out and see the shadow, but there would be a reflection on the water that is
I'm not talking about water.
Well, he is. In his comparison here, he's showing the reflection angle to the perspective of the person that's viewing it is different. Like, for example,
the atmosphere would work the same way. The atmosphere is kind of a liquid. That's even what they say. So if the sun were outside of this atmosphere shining through, then it would render itself in a different position for two different people. And it's the same thing. Heliocentrism can't triangulate the sun either. So, they try and demand that flat earthers triangulate the sun to get the distance, but that certainly isn't how heliocentrism gets the distance of the sun.
And I think I heard an announcement even just today that NASA is claiming that the sun may be bigger than they expected, which throws everything off. Did you hear that, Jaren?
Yeah, I heard it yesterday. I don't know how much bigger.
Right.
But and even Vsauce, he's really the only one that I've heard explain it right when he said that, the Aristophanes thing, does it prove? And he said no, because if the sun was 3,000 miles high and 32 miles in diameter, the mathematics works out exactly the same on a flat plane.
I've heard that similar thing too.
Interesting.
But we don't believe that the sun is 3,000 miles high. We believe that it's relative to everyone's position and much closer. But if we need to move on if we're going to make it through the list.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys got it right. Yeah, let's move on. So that was number 7. So you guys are now on number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6 is the Canigou Mountain from L.L.C, France. It's basically one of the world records for the furthest distance seen. It's about 160 miles, which it's from 1,000-foot observation point, and the mountain itself is 8,000 feet high. It should be 2 miles behind the curvature of the Earth, but it is shown twice a year when the sun sets behind it. And you're not actually seeing that particular mountain. We know that because the light would not reach your eyes. What you're seeing is the sun setting behind it, so you get the silhouette of the mountain. So science tells us that is from refraction, basically saying that the mountain is lifted up 2 miles from behind a curvature and then shown to us, when that simply, it just doesn't make sense. The whole idea of refraction, we don't see it from the ISS, when clearly the ISS is in the least dense atmosphere, looking at the sunrise from behind the Earth, which would be looking through the atmosphere, which should be the most amount of refraction. You're looking from no density to heavy density, but we don't see refraction there. So they just kind of pick and choose when they want to use it. We want them to explain why we can see mountains 160 miles away, which should be clearly impossible on a globe.
And the reason you only see it twice a year is because there's a difference between source light coming from the sun and reflected light, which is daily, light that's bouncing off of something. So during the day, those mountains are lit up, and the light, comes to our eyes, as we're told, is how we see. But there's so much atmosphere in between, it basically turns into sky, and that light can't get to us. But the sun is much more powerful and can burn through that, and you can see the sun much farther. So twice a year, when the sun is lined up right behind that mountain, you can see the silhouette of it perfectly clear without question.
All right, that's a pretty good challenge to science.
It's similar to like the Chicago skyline as well. It's another thing you see twice a year when the sun hits just right with the water and all that. So yeah, I've seen the videos of that as well. I don't know all the science behind it. I'm not a science guy. I don't know all the science how that works. I know it's similar to like when you stick a straw in a glass of water and that straw looks bent. It's
the index of refraction.
That's changing mediums.
Right. That's I gotcha. But I'm not a science guy. But I'm relating to your story. Like I know the Chicago skyline does that too. So
that's 60 miles though, or 50 miles, and the L.L.C, France to Canigao is 160 miles. So, I mean that's without question a major issue. And there's actually people that all travel to go see it because it happens on the same 2 days. So it's not an atmospheric thing. It's not when the weather conditions are right. It happens when the sun sets at an exact angle that it gets behind that mountain range.
All right. Derek, Jay, Andrea, any of you guys have any questions on this one?
I would obviously have to research more into that. I mean, if the sun's setting behind the mountain and it's projecting the shadow of the mountain up higher, I'm not really seeing the visual for this one, why it would be refraction specifically. But again, like I said, I'd have to do more research.
Okay. These are good challenges back to science from a flat earth perspective that they want, if we could prove, I say we, as in me and you guys in the room, it's really as science could prove that they're looking for these answers. And I know that our listeners out there are going, why didn't you say this formula or this equation?
Because we don't know.
We are encouraging our listeners to also, in the show notes or in the comment section below the Facebook post or what have you for this episode, please add in commentary, add in your insight into this, and also understand that Jaren and David are our guests, and we've invited them on here to do this and share their questions and share their insight into life. So
if we don't know it, we don't know the answer, and if you know the answers, please make a video and say, here's the 10 things that the flat earthers questioned answered. That'd be awesome.
Right. And also, if you have a question or an objection or something, just write it nicely on your Facebook, on the Facebook page, Adam. I'm sure there'll be a post when you post this podcast.
You got it.
And we'll try to, look at it and give you our answer. And then you could weigh our answer and either throw it out or ask another question.
Perfect. I love it. So that one was number 7. Was that number 7, right? So the one we just did?
Yes.
I think that was 6.
That was 6.
That was 6, yeah.
Oh, that was 6? Yeah. All right. We're at a point in the podcast where we're going to take a break in studio. You're going to hear a little bit of music from our favorite DJ and friend of the show, DJ Gil Lugo. He plays most of our break music and our intro and outro kind of music. So you're going to hear something from him and a little bit from our sponsors of our show. Give us a few minutes, guys, and we will be right back.
Hey, Tach, you ever have that conversation with your girl about where to eat dinner and it always turns into that back and forth? I don't know, you pick.
Yeah, every once in a while, yeah.
Yeah? Well, I've got an answer for you next time that comes up.
Oh, yeah? Where at?
The Salty Fox in Melbourne off of Old Galley Boulevard.
Oh, nice. I've actually been there, and the food was pretty awesome.
Hell yeah, it was. They offer a great selection of paninis, shareable appetizers, soups, and salads, and one of the best desserts I've ever had, the Funky Monkey.
Oh, yeah. My favorite was the vintage options. They got this meal called ramen noodle on crack. You just got to try it out.
Done. That's definitely what I'm getting next time.
Put the fun between your legs at the Salty Fox every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. with the Old Galley Arts District Bike Crawl.
It's a 4-mile bicycle ride down Pineapple Avenue with stops for food and beer all along the route. Be sure to visit the Salty Fox every Sunday for brunch from 11 to 4.
Hey, isn't that the $10 bottomless mimosas brunch?
Sure is. Enjoy your brunch while the Salty Fox's DJ spins throwbacks and top 40 hits.
Salty Fox is located in the downtown Eau Gallie Art District on Eau Gallie Boulevard.
Check them out on Facebook at facebook.com/saltyfoxmelbourne or online at thesaltyfox.net.
Hey listeners, be sure to mention you heard about the Salty Fox in our show, and you'll get 10% off your meals.
Village Idiot Pub. You locals know about it. You guys from out of town have to check them out.
Village Idiot Pub is now a proud sponsor with Living Podcariously and the Twisted 10 podcasts.
It's more than just about commercials, though. The cast here will be taking our show on the road to Village Idiot to record some episodes as well as hold events. They have over 30 beers on tap, including ciders and Hefeweizen, my favorite, as well as hundreds of bottle choices.
Adam, you forgot my favorite, all the delicious wine. So get your friends together and enjoy the board games, puzzles, and the giant Jenga.
Let the owner, Jason, as well as the rest of the staff there, take excellent care of your beer drinking needs.
Mention either one of our shows to the staff and get 10% off your tab.
Tuesday is open mic, Wednesday is trivia, Thursday is karaoke, Friday and Saturday night are live music.
Visit them at 4 Harrison Street, Suite 103, Cocoa, Florida, or Village Idiot Pub on Facebook. And don't forget, they are a dog-friendly location, so bring your friends, family, and fur babies.
Hey, it's Adam. If you enjoy the hosts or the content of the Twisted 10, be sure to check out our other show. It's called Living Podcariously. While the Twisted 10 may get crass and explicit occasionally, it holds no water to Living Podcariously. We do get a little bit more rough and raw on that show. We have a lot of fun producing it and have had some awesome guests. And as always, thanks for listening. All right, welcome back to the Twisted 10. And this week is, man, it's a lot of fun. It's some very interesting perspectives, and we thank you guys very much for joining us on the show this week. If you guys don't mind, you guys are doing the top 10 desires for scientific proof, like basically experiments or interactions you would like to see happen from the flat Earth perspective viewpoint. So not necessarily the top 10 reasons why the Earth is flat, but the top 10 things you would like to see happen that would potentially prove the Earth is flat. So can you do me a favor and give us the rundown of 10 through 6, and then we'll start off on number 5 here in a minute.
Sure. 10 was film the Earth from the moon. 9 was SpaceX modeling their rocket landing. 8 was prove the Earth spins. 7 was Neil deGrasse to actually do some educating and Bill Nye to stop educating. And 6 was Canigou Mountain from Aloche, France, the 160-mile observation, which shouldn't be observed.
Okay.
All right.
Good summary of your first 5. So let's go to number 5.
Number 5.
So number 5 is circumnavigation of the Earth, because we know that there's been literally billions of people who have circumnavigated east-west, and currently there are, depending on who you ask, 1, 2, or 3 people that have circumnavigated north-south. And the one who did it first, it took 5 years, and he's a cousin of the Queen, Freemason, somebody who's been accused multiple times of faking injuries during these expeditions. And then also in December 2014, when I was just really getting into flat Earth research, I saw that there was a man attempting to fly from North America down to Uruguay, then Chile. Then he was going to fly over the South Pole, land in New Zealand, then New Zealand to Alaska, Alaska to the North Pole, and then back to the United States. This was to set the record for north-south circumnavigation by a plane. And the journey was going to be tracked by a thing called Spider Tracks, which I guess you attach to the plane or something, and you can watch it live. So I was really interested in it. Of course, it took like a week or longer, because it's a little tiny plane and it barely is 10,000 feet off the ground, so it doesn't go very fast. But when I watched it, I was really interested in when he flew over the South Pole. So we saw him leave Brazil. He went to the South Pole and then immediately turned around and went back to Brazil. When he got to Brazil, he then left Brazil and went to New Zealand, then from New Zealand up. So I kind of gave up on it. Like, well, this guy didn't do what he was supposed to do. He reported that the weather was really bad at the South Pole and there was a headwind, so he wouldn't have been able to make it to New Zealand. So I kind of discounted it. But lo and behold, when he got home, they gave him the record for north-south circumnavigation when he clearly didn't do what he's supposed to do. So to me, that was one of the biggest evidences for me. Why is there no north-south circumnavigation? Why can't they just they did a solar plane recently that flew nonstop east-west circumnavigation, but it certainly seems like when you look at the two models, the globe and the flat Earth absolutely says that there is no such thing as a north-south circumnavigation. And that kind of makes sense when you look at the numbers that literally billions of people have circumnavigated east-west, and 1, 2, or 3 have circumnavigated north-south.
What do you do in case of an emergency?
East is not a straight line, nor is west. They are both curving lines, circles around a center point, which we call the magnetic north. So east, when you're going west, you have to constantly correct to the right, to the north, to maintain your heading. Now, lots of ball Earth believers will say this is ridiculous. Planes don't do that, but the pilot wouldn't even know. Ships captains have noted that they have to keep changing their course to keep their dead reckoning of east or west. But the truth is, even on a ball Earth, you would have to do that. If the Earth was a ball, which is ridiculous, to maintain your east or west heading around the North Pole, you would have to constantly turn your course. So it works on both.
All right. Jay.
So there you go.
Jay had a follow-up question on that.
So just being practical about flying north-south and circumnavigating that way, what do you do if you're in an emergency? I mean, flying east to west, you're going over like, for the most part, places that are habitated, places that are, I can't even think of my words right now.
Land?
You're going over land. You're going over land. You're going over land where people live that can help if there's an emergency. Yeah, you have oceans, and yeah, there's always some kind of risk. But if I'm flying around the Earth and I'm trying to circumnavigate, I'm not going to set myself up to have to go over the North Pole and South Pole, because if I have an emergency, I'm more than likely, I have more chances of actually dying. Like, I'm going to give myself the best shot of surviving this trip. I mean, it makes more sense to me that they don't, because anybody that would, I'm like, you're a crazy person. Best of luck to you. But you're setting yourself up for a lot of failure.
Hey, Jaren and David, would a drone flight? Would your group accept data that comes out of a drone flight doing that same path? Would that?
I don't think a drone could really. Well, they have the solar drone that went east-west, and I didn't have to have a pilot though.
I don't know that one. I don't know that experiment.
That thing. But yeah, if there is such thing, yeah, as long as it could be tracked and it would have to be something that could be seen from the ground so that it could be verified that what was being tracked. You can't just give us numbers on a computer screen and say that it means that the plane's flying. You would have to have verification that somebody says, okay, I see the thing flying in the air, and this thing says it's right above my head at this time, so it is correct. But yeah, that would be okay.
So there's flights that go across the pretty big oceans. If you took a flight from Chile over the South Pole to New Zealand, how far is that, Jaren? How far is that on a globe?
Well, that's several thousand miles, but you're also not in sub-zero temperature. Like you actually have half a chance of surviving that. If you get stuck in the water and you're stranded, you're not going to die of hypothermia because it's not 5 degrees.
We have astronauts going up into space, rockets going all over the place. Just send one around the South Pole just once, and prove that it was done. And it isn't done. I mean, if you look at southern flights in the deep South, they don't just go around the bottom of the globe. They go all the way up to the north or back over and down. To go from Santiago to New Zealand, they go up to the United States, they go over to Dubai, and then they fly all the way back down again. And that is absolutely ridiculous until you look at a flat Earth map and realize it's a straight line.
To ask, I want to follow up with one quick question on that. If I circumnavigated east-west on a flat Earth model, and I pick the distance that's equidistant north of the equator as it is equidistant south of the equator, let's say around...
Adam?
Yeah.
You want to think that statement over again? Equidistant north of the equator?
Yeah.
And south of the equator?
He's saying
the equator's
south,
in the middle.
the same number of degrees of latitude north and the same number of degrees latitude south, right?
I got you. I'm sorry about that.
I don't know the sciencey terms you guys do. I'm just saying, all right, let's say you picked New York, for example. All right, let's pick the longitude and latitude of New York, all right, wherever that point is, and then get the same distance from the equator, but in the southern hemisphere, wherever the hell that might be. And then you did an east-west beginning and end for both. In a flat Earth model, the time it would take to go from New York, then circumnavigate right back to New York, would be exponentially less than the time it would take in the southern hemisphere to go that same path. So in your flat Earth model, wouldn't that take literally 3 times or 4 times as long to travel that?
Adam?
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, on that note,
we win. I don't.
All right.
Just kidding.
No, I would be curious to see, because I would like to see that actually happen. I would like to see the time it takes to go from one place to another on that model.
That's true. That these flat Earth model definitely calls for these, Tropic of Cancer to be shorter than the Tropic of Capricorn.
Okay.
What shape is Australia in the flat Earth model? Is it just this long, thin spaghetti hot dog?
What shape is it in the Gales Peter map? Everything that we look at is a projection. So it's not, the Mercator map is a projection. You look at Greenland and it looks to be almost the same size as Africa when it's 1/14 the size.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I've seen a globe, like a school globe, and I assume that the projection on that is an accurate depiction, minus the mountains and stuff that they like to upraise on them. So
you say it's accurate or inaccurate?
Well, it's the problem with projections is that you're trying to project a 3D surface onto a 2D surface. That's the issue with a projection. If the world is flat, there's no need for a projection because everything's already flat.
Right.
You just say
we
it exactly
we don't
how
have
it is.
100% accurate map, and neither do you.
I guess, but at least the proportions of Australia, I think Australia is like, like a TV set, 4:3 ratio. But in a flat Earth model, it'd be like a 1:4 ratio, maybe. So you could just drive across it. Anyone who drives across Australia could confirm that.
The easiest way to answer these questions is based on square footage or square mileage of the continents themselves. That's going to be the easiest way to tell how many square miles.
No, because
Africa
you can have the same amount of area in a different.
So
with different
again, this is a whole nother show.
You're right.
The lines of longitude are. We don't believe that they're straight lines. The flat Earth map that we go by is as accurate as some of the globe projections. We don't have an exact map, but it is pretty close. We think in some ways, some of the continents may not be exactly where they're showing on that map, but it is a better representation than any globe. Jaren, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to make the globe work, and the only difference is with the flat Earth map is the kind of what you were saying earlier when you said that the Tropic of Cancer is going to be shorter than the Capricorn. So it's the same thing on the globe. They have it modeled to where they've got their little picture of Australia, and in our map, those lines actually extend, right? They don't come back to a point as they do on the globe. So things get expanded towards the outer edge, which really only affects Australia. Really, it's not going to affect the little tail of South America enough for any noticeable change. And I do think there's a couple people that are working on a measuring of the train tracks that run through Australia and verifying that those train tracks total mileage equals what they should. So I know that some people are working on that question.
Let's move on to the next one to get you guys in and out on your time. So we are going to be on number 4.
Mm-hmm. Number
4 is an interesting. Oh, go ahead. Jeez, I keep forgetting.
We don't get much as the way of interaction anyway. All right, go ahead, guys.
All right, number 4 is evolution. And what we mean by this is that, we understand that the theory of evolution by natural selection came about in the 1800s or mid-1800s as the process by which organisms change over time. The problem is, from our vantage point, and most flat earthers' vantage point, that we have yet to be explained how exactly any group of, let's say, humans could evolve. Even people like Richard Dawkins cannot explain it. Nobody has been able to explain it. Meaning, we'll just ask you, if there's a group of 100 human beings, and there's going to be some sort of evolution to where we become some sort of new species, how would that transition take place? Because no matter how you look at it, it couldn't possibly happen. If it's over time, they say that over time it happens. Well, it must happen at birth or during an organism's life. And either way doesn't make sense, because once you had the new species appear, then it could not have any relationship with anybody that existed with it. So it would die out. how is it going to find another species of its same type, meaning somebody else evolved at the same time? Then they would have a child, but then that child would just die because it's not going to be able to procreate with another unless somebody else also changed species. So evolution absolutely is one of the worst things in science to be taught as a fact in educational centers, universities, grade school, high school, when it is the most nonsense theory of all time. It helps in other areas, but it certainly cannot describe how any species can change to another species.
All right.
Wouldn't we have changed into another species again? Why are we staying human if we were monkeys?
You know what? That's a fair question. All right, we're going to.
I believe in creation,
we were apes.
so.
We were apes.
I
not monkeys.
wasn't.
Andrea is a unique perspective in our cast because she is a creationist. So she's a very, very firm believer in that. Most of the rest of us, I believe, are either agnostic, atheist, or somewhere in between some of those. Mm-hmm. I'm an agnostic theist, which is even more peculiar. But,
I mean, the heliocentric model of evolution is, once there was nothing, it exploded into everything. And then, all of this life just evolved from pond scum to humans. I could actually buy all of that. But a pineapple, where did that come from?
All right. None of us are scientists to that level, but let's at least answer to our ability the best that we can, but keep in mind we're on a tight schedule, so maybe a short 1-minute answer out of you guys if you've got one.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Evolution, I mean, you guys have clearly made this argument to other people who have told you the layman's understanding and propagated the common talking points, I guess, of evolution. You gave the example of 100 humans, and I know that 100 humans is too few to have a breeding population. So you couldn't just have 100 humans, is what I'm trying to say. You could have 1 million humans, and then that group has enough genetic diversity and interconnectedness in order to slowly, over time, have their children not die of a certain thing, and that not dying of a certain thing means that those genes are propagated to the future children. So over a very small incremental changes, all of a sudden we aren't dying from this one thing more than another, and it's difficult to comprehend the numbers involved, but there's millions of years in which this can happen. We've been in our current human forms for something around 1 million years. There's not too much change, but there's definitely a lot more change than 10 million years ago. Did I say that backwards?
Okay. No,
I said that backwards.
No, I think
it's pretty fair. Jay, Tach, Andrew, you guys have anything?
Yeah. Well, if you want to talk about just basic evolution, or are we only specifically talking about humans?
Well, that's just an easy thing to describe, because even what was just described over thousands of years or whatever, millions of years, whatever, how could there be a new species emerge that would be able to have sexual relations with another of the same species to continue that species? It just couldn't possibly happen.
But the species never went anywhere. It was the same species the whole time.
So isn't the definition of like a new species means you can't procreate with the former species?
I think the scientific definition is that, yes, they branch off, and then all of a sudden, because you've changed so much, you can't go back. But I mean,
it's the same with dogs.
That have to happen in unison, because if you can't have relations with your mother's generation, then there has to be somebody who evolved at the exact same time as you, and then you have to meet that person. You have to have sexual relations with that person, and then your child needs to also meet somebody who also had the same thing happen.
You still have enough similar genetic code, though. The genetics aren't that far off. I mean, you give it a couple of 100,000 years, and maybe possibly. But I mean, if you're talking one generation to the next, you're still sharing a lot of genetic code. Like, there's no reason why that wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, this isn't something that happens one generation, and then all of a sudden,
I'm looking at a dog that's a mix between two different species right now. That happens.
My name is Adam, Jay. I'd appreciate to be addressed by Adam.
And these came from wolves. And so,
well, dogs are the same species. They're canines. They're not different species.
Yeah, I think they mean the species as in species, genus, phylum.
Yeah, we don't have a construct answer to answer that one. However, that doesn't mean we're wrong on our perspective.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, and I just want somebody to explain it just like what
Explain
you just
to me
said
too.
about how it's over many generations of time, but there has to be a point where you go from one species to the next, because
All right.
at that point you no longer can have relations with the species that you were. So when is that point? That's the thing. They explain it away by saying hundreds of millions of years. Well, that's great that you say that, but it still has to have a point where either you birth a new species or it happens during that species' life.
Okay.
They describe it away with millions of billions of years, but that's not possible, because how would you have sexual relations with something that also evolved at the exact same time?
All right, fair enough. Let's maybe our listeners can help to answer that question a little bit for us. We're going to move on to number 3. It is 8:31. I want to make sure I get you guys out of here in time. So move on to number 3.
Number 3.
All right, number 3, north and south differences. Based on the heliocentric model, the North Pole should be identical. Well, I'll hold that back. Should be very similar to the South Pole. What actually should be the truth is that the South Pole should be a more tropical place, because it gets the sun 3 million miles closer than the North. However, it is the complete opposite. Even though the sun is closer in the South, and the South supposedly gets a 24-hour sun, it is a frozen tundra to which there's no really species of animal or plant that thrives down there. So it clearly matches more closely the flat Earth model. If you just think about the tilt of the globe on each side, they should be very similar. However, as far north as like 80 degrees, we have even people living in the north. Eskimos exist there at 79 degrees. You've got reindeer, plants, squirrels, vegetables, all at 80 degrees. Where at the south, even as far as 54 degrees, there's not even a plant enough to make a toothpick, according to Captain Cook. So there's clearly a discrepancy with what the model shows us versus what we see in reality. The south is clearly a frozen tundra that never melts, that is a barren place that is, gets to be 145, I think, negative 145 degrees. The north is nothing like that. It has 4 seasons. It has clearly livable weather, and has what seems to be a melting and then a growing ice cap. That the north becomes the ice cap, then it melts. That becomes the ice cap and it melts, which makes sense on a flat Earth. This is the sun circles closer to the North Pole and then goes back out towards the Tropic of Cancer or Capricorn.
Okay, so the question here for you guys would be to demonstrate the difference between the two. What's the actual challenge that you're looking for?
The question is why wouldn't we have similar weather, similar life at similar latitudes, and they're completely opposite, and what we observe matches exactly what the flat Earth map would show, and the globe, it makes absolutely no sense on the globe.
All right, fair question. Our cast in here, do you guys have any kind of retort for this one?
You mentioned that the sun is 3,000 miles closer to the South Pole. Could you expand on that?
It's 3 million miles closer, which is 375 Earth diameters. So, for us in the north,
where do you come up with that number? I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's the apogee and perigee, or whatever they call the ellipse orbit of the Earth. The Earth is closer in January to the sun.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So, which is just counterintuitive. I mean, we've talked about it before, that the sun is clearly closer to the north during the northern summer. It's right on top of me, and I can feel it in my face. And in the south, when it's in the south, which is during my winter, when they say it's closer, I can go outside and stare at it even when it's at its zenith, which may only be 30 or 40 degrees, but I clearly cannot feel the heat of the sun.
Yeah. I mean, the angle that the sun's light hits the Earth is going to be the biggest factor into whether or not it's summer or winter. The tilt of the Earth allows more sunlight to hit, and I'm sure you guys already know this, creating the seasons.
David,
have you guys?
Let me talk this. This is what you've been told, and you're just buying it. You're not really thinking about it. They're saying that when the northern hemisphere is tilted away, the sunlight comes in at more of an angle, and it spreads out over a bigger area, and that's what is causing our winter. And then when it's tilted towards the sun, we're getting more direct sun. And that's what causes our summer. But that's absolute nonsense, because if that was true, every morning, every day of the year at sunrise, when the sun's angle couldn't be any less, at 1 degree, 2 degree, as it comes up, let alone, where it is from the tilt of the earth, it would be absolutely freezing. But that is not the case at all, because on the summer solstice for us in June, when the sun pops up over the horizon, comes into view, you can feel the heat blasting on your body like a heat lamp, like a close and local heat lamp. But on December 21st, at its apogee, as Jaren said, maybe 30 or 40 degrees up in the sky, you can stare at the sun and barely feel the heat because it's far away.
All right.
It has nothing to do, not nothing, but it has almost nothing to do with the angle of the light coming in.
All right, David, we've got a couple retorts in here for that. So Jay or Derek, which I know both of you guys had something you wanted to add to it.
Yeah, we live in Florida, so you can't stare at the sun whether it's summer or winter. It's always hot.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that you're closer to the sun. And it is way hotter. I don't go to Florida in the summer because it is way hotter because you're closer to the sun then.
Well, all right. Okay. I don't know the answer to that one. Jay, what'd you have?
Wait, so what happens in South? I'm totally lost on this.
I'll draw a picture for you later.
What happens in South America? I mean, as somebody from South America, I don't know. I don't know. I'm totally lost on this. I'm totally lost.
So the sun makes wider loops around the flat Earth in the summer, and so don't think of the hemispheres as top and bottom. Think of the inner northern hemisphere. Then there's the equator dividing us from the outer southern hemisphere. So in our winter, January, February, the sun is making wider loops and is closer to all of the outer southern hemiplane continents.
Is this something that
be closer to the land, which is why they get that fact? The reason that they say that the sun is closer in the south is because it probably is on the flat Earth model. It is closer to the land in the south than when it's in the north. It's higher up.
Is this something that you were told?
No, this is something we're observing.
Something you're observing. So this is something that we're observing as well.
What are you observing? You're observing that the angle of the sun is causing the seasons, or you were told that?
Well, now I'm being told that, your model. So, I mean, neither you nor I have gone up to space to physically look at it.
So let me.
We're all going off what we see.
Let's go 1 minute for the next till we're on to number 2. So wrap up on this side because we're getting really close to cutoff time.
Okay.
So I'm good. I'm done then. I'm fine.
Okay.
Let's
just want to make sure we get through. 1 minute. So go for it, Tach.
I'm just saying. My point is, you're telling us, well, that's what you're told. Therefore, we can't form our own opinion. It's impossible because we're just going by what we're told. But it's also we're also observing as well. We observe every single day what the sun does every year, 365. We observe it as well, just like you do.
Right.
We're just observing it different. I still got a minute,
but you're not paying attention. The fact that Antarctica is gigantic and never melts, and the North melts and gets a visible 24-hour sun in its summer. It shows that it's not equal. It's not working. The ball, the tilted ball going around the sun does not work.
Well, we've definitely
if we have time.
We've definitely warmed up the Earth enough for the South Pole to start melting too. The giant Delaware-sized piece that just broke off.
All right, we're going to move on to number 2.
Number 2.
Dos.
Number 2 is the idea of a sphere pulling things to the center has never been shown. It's a absolute staple in the heliocentric model that spheres become the centers of gravity pull things into spheres, and we just want one simple example of that. It never happens. You can go to the ISS, you can go in a vacuum chamber and throw a bunch of dust around. You could empty a bunch of Cheetos or ping pong balls. They would never join together as a sphere. It doesn't happen. Empty a pitcher of water in the ISS and it's not going to make a sphere. So the whole idea of things pulling into center spheres is probably one of the biggest lies ever.
All right. 1 minute on this, guys. I want to make sure we get through it quick enough.
1 minute.
Well, if we have time at the end, we can ask some Q&A, but that's going to be up to these guys.
Yeah, a sphere is definitely the lowest. Energy always seeks the lowest energy level, and a sphere is one of the most efficient ways to pack a certain amount of volume into whatever area you have. You minimize the surface area. You allowed the maximum volume. The problem with doing this experiment is that the electromagnetic force is much stronger than gravity. So you're going to have dust particles that are that another force is overpowering the gravitational attraction. Now, if you look at I don't know what your opinion is on other stars, but we've taken images of the dust disks around other stars, and you can see trails within those of the dust coagulating into planetoids. In a couple billion years, they'll become planets of their own. But
okay,
or perhaps you're just seeing animations from fake telescopes.
Through my own telescope? I don't think so. I don't think NASA's gone into my telescope
you're seeing
and
little
changed
specks of light in the sky. That's all you're seeing. And then everything else that you think you see is taught to us by Disney and NASA.
Well, hang on a minute, Derek. I think the question here is, do you actually have a telescope strong enough to see dust rings?
Not the dust rings, not the dust rings, but I have seen Saturn. I have seen Jupiter, and those aren't manufactured. The dots do move around Jupiter. The moons do move around.
You're right. And I could film some lights down the end of my street and tell you that those are planets too.
Hey guys, so from the flat Earth, just to clarify this a little bit, we talked about this a little bit on the Hysteria 51 podcast. Right. What's perceivable to from the Earth-bound observer, flat Earth or round Earth observer, in some flat Earth theorists' circles, is that everything that we can perceive that's beyond our skies is a projection, and that projection is smart enough to know if you're focusing in on something, it can show you what you want to see. So it's
we don't believe that at all.
We don't believe that.
Oh, you
no.
can't misrepresent their point.
No. I guess I spoke incorrectly. If we have time, can you clarify that real quick?
Sure, the lights in the sky are lights in the sky. There is Saturn. It looks like a little ball, and I have also seen Jupiter. I got a P900 this last week. Zoom in on Jupiter, and sure enough, I can see the 4 so-called moons. Now, I say that they're moons because I've been taught that they're moons. But when you watch them, they could literally be lights in the sky. There's no proof that Jupiter is 100 times the size of the Earth. It's absolutely crazy. Again, if you look through a microscope at a leaf, it'd be the equivalent of somebody telling me, see those cells in there on that leaf? You can actually go there, and that cell is 100 times bigger than the Earth. It's nonsense. That's what a telescope is. It's not looking further. It's just magnifying what we see.
Well,
it's smaller and smaller lights, making them look like you're zooming in. You could put a bunch of different sized dots on the wall and then zoom in farther and farther, and it'll look like you're traveling through space. But in reality, you're just zooming in like a microscope does.
All right. We are getting very close to your guys' deadline, so I want to make sure. I want to make sure we get your list out of the way first, and then we're definitely going to have some Q&A, and I actually am going to invite you guys to come back on for another episode later, so we can even have some follow-up questions for you guys on some of this stuff, because this is...
What number are we on?
You guys are on number 1.
Number 1.
Uno.
Number 1, there's no 24/7 view of the Earth from the ISS, which is what we talked about earlier. It makes absolutely zero sense. It tells me that there's a deception there. 16 years, or actually I think it's 17 years now, that we've had a craft in orbit of the Earth. It's only 250 miles away. It's closer than San Francisco to L.A., and yet they cannot provide a 24/7 view of the Earth from space. It's the most ridiculous thing. NASA, every single penny that they get is from the people who live in this country, and I'm pretty sure that they would all like an image, a video of where they live. It's 2017. Everybody's got 4K cameras. They're like $100 now to get a camera off the shelf somewhere, and yet NASA pretends that exposure problems, and they can make beautiful CGI videos of like the Earth going by with lights on it, but they can't show any of that in real time. You just get a black screen. They talk to astronauts with a 10-second delay. What a joke that is. They're 250 miles away. David, maybe one day from California to New York, we'll have less than a 10-second delay when we talk on the phone, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
That could be more FCC getting involved, restricting what's going. No, I'm just kidding.
NASA just released a 4K video of a spacewalk, but they only showed it for like 16 seconds. We'd like them to take that 4K camera. Again, we talked about this from the moon, but in real time, show us the Earth. Show us the Earth in real time. You do a 360 while you're doing a spacewalk. They've never done a 180 camera pan out in space or on the moon. Do a 360, show us in real time, tell us what you're seeing, and that would be a step in the right direction.
All right. Real quick, retort on this one, guys. Do you have anything for 24/7 camera on the space station?
No, I think it's the same as the video of the Earth from the moon.
Okay.
We kind of touched on that already.
All right. David and Jaren, you guys, it is currently time to stop. However, I want to check you guys one more last second for your time. I want to make sure we get the plugs out of the way. 7 minutes? Okay. So let's do this real quick, rapid fire. I'm going to go around to each one of our cast members here in the studio and see if you have a question for David and Jaren to answer. Please limit it down to one. I want to invite them back in to do an audio podcast again, maybe on Living Podcariously as a follow-up, our other podcast that we do, to ask Q&A. Just go back and forth and, answer questions. So let's start with Derek. Derek, give them a question if you've got one lined up.
So we know the North Star changes latitude. The further north you go, it actually rises up until it's directly overhead. What is also an occurrence, and you guys believe in Australia, so if you go to either Australia or Chile, you'll see another point of rotation. That's the southern hemisphere. The Earth is rotating, so top and bottom. But the stars that are shown are the same whether they're in Bolivia or Australia. There's a second point of rotation. And I can understand if you say the sky is rotating around the North Pole, that's fine, but why is there a second rotation in the sky, and why is it the same one regardless of where you are in the southern hemisphere?
All right, real quick, out of Jaren and David, what do you guys answer for that?
Okay, so kind of confused what you mean by the North Pole, because if you're standing at the North Pole, the Polaris would be right above your head, and if you went for a walk to the equator, it would slowly lower its view to you till it was at the horizon when you get to the equator. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just thought of another question. Are stars infinitely far away in your model?
No, they're pretty close.
They're fixed, but they disappear over the horizon? I'm just not
right.
Yeah, the ceiling of the Earth or the sky would be really low, because we've seen planes get up in hot air, helium balloons. They get up and they don't see stars anymore. So that's at 100,000 feet. So let's pretend that the sun and everything, it was 300,000 feet. That's only 75 miles. So if you picture 75 miles on the flat Earth map, that is such a tiny distance. You could actually turn that on its end, and that would be the height of the sky. So people think of the flat Earth and they draw this big dome over the top of it, when that's not an accurate depiction. The sky is actually very low to where we stand on the Earth. So if you're standing at the equator, you can no longer see the North Star, which was straight above the North Pole, right? But if you walk towards it, you start to see it as it rises in your sky, which is all due to perspective. It's just that, the sky slants down to the point of your horizon, but nothing is actually slanting down. It's just off in the distance, right? If a plane flies away from you, it goes to the horizon line. It doesn't fly into the sky and disappear up high, because everything goes to our vanishing point. Just like when we draw perspective drawings, everything works the same way.
Converging lines, that makes sense.
So then back to my original point, what I meant by the North Pole is, Polaris is above you, but if you watch the night sky over the period of night, the reason that it's the North Star is because the other stars revolve around that star, which is an illusion created by the spin of the Earth. There's a second point of revolution underneath, in the southern hemisphere, that you can't see the North Star, but the point of revolution is still there, and it's the same across the southern hemisphere.
So let me touch on this, and Jaren could finish. All of the stars spin around us with Polaris being the centered over the North Pole, if you will. And as you walk away, due to perspective, the Polaris will set. It'll go past the point of convergence.
I agree.
Just like Jaren always makes the example, you're in a room right now with an 8-foot high ceiling with inset lights. Now imagine that room is the size of a city. And if you look, miles across, and within a couple of miles, the ceiling is going to converge with the floor, and you're not going to be able to see any of the same lights as somebody on the other side of that room. And that's exactly what's going on here. All of those are spinning around. But when you get into the southern hemisphere, there is optics, through the atmosphere, through the ceiling or the dome or whatever you want to call it, and things change directions. I think Jaren might be able to touch on it a little more. Visuals definitely help with this one, Jaren.
Yeah, it's really tough. We've been asking for somebody who can model it because it's hard to explain with words. But the fact that there is no center star in the south, it appears that those stars are circling an empty area. And
Right.
you kind of describe it as it's the same stars in each of the locations in the south, but all those places have a different nighttime, right? It's not night in Australia and night in South America at the same time. And actually, by the time it gets to South America's nighttime, the stars have rotated around that point. So they're never at the same point as people like to describe it, which could be if you're standing in the south, looking south, the stars are coming from behind your back, going around you, almost like a letter N, but flat with your eyes, like a hula hoop. And that would be a very weird optical event. Stars always rise in the east, though, and set in the west. And if you think about it, if you're looking north and things are rising in the east and setting in the west, then they are going counterclockwise. And if you just turn around and look south and things are rising on your left-hand side from the east and going to the west, now they're going clockwise. That's why things appear to be going the opposite direction. But it comes down to what we were taught in school. They have simply indoctrinated us into a certain belief. There's people out there who will say, these stars prove that the earth is a ball. Well, that's what they taught us. So of course people say that. But if you really start to think about it, it's not what they taught us. It doesn't work.
All right. Let's move on to the next question. Tack, do you have anything for the gentleman? Make it
kind of.
quick.
It might be super quick, or it could open up a whole rabbit hole. I don't know.
We'll let the answer coming back from Jaren and David determine how long you want to talk.
I just have it's kind of a simple question, because I really don't know the answer to this. Is the flat Earth model? Well, first of all, is there an actual dome or no?
Yeah, I don't profess to know that because
okay, that's fine.
it would certainly be higher than I can get.
Gotcha. Well, the main question
seems like there's something like that.
The main question is the flat Earth model, is that intelligent design, or
Yes.
or are we? Is that what it is?
It's not a random. It's not. For me to say that it's intelligently designed, if you knew who I've been my entire life, I was Mr. Scientist. Astronomy is the real science. Astrology is nonsense. And when you start looking at all of this and seeing all of the evidence, there's different people. Some people say there's a dome. Some people say it's an infinite plane. There's all sorts of different stuff, but what we all know is that we don't live on a spinning ball, and we're not a random speck in the middle of infinite universe, and that whatever created this, and I'm not even going to put a name on it or how, it is intelligently designed.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I didn't know that. Okay, all right.
So just one last thing. A lot of people say, "Oh, flat earthers are a bunch of religious nut jobs."
I've never
there
heard
are
that
a lot
before,
of people
honestly.
that follow the Bible that say the Bible supports all of this, and it is quite interesting to me. But I never use the Bible as an example, as a reason. I just say, all of this, and look at the Bible. The Bible kind of supports it also. So there are religious people in this, but this is not a religious movement. It's not even a movement. It's an awakening to the reality of who we are, where we are, and what we are. And if you don't know that, you really can't go forward in life.
I got you. Okay.
All right, we've got one more question we're going to follow up with. So Andrea and Jay are both diverting their question over to Derek. So Derek, you got something you want to fire back?
I actually didn't have a question. I just wanted to say that's kind of funny. You guys are actually the more non-theist in the group, and we're the more theist, because I'm actually deeply pretty deeply religious, but interesting.
And the flat earth doesn't knock out religion. I mean, you just really have to look at it. It's a longer discussion. Let's have it on the next one. Let Jaren say his last minute, because he's going live on another show in 5 minutes.
All right, guys, go ahead and wrap up. So Jaren, take it away first. Jaren from Jarenism on YouTube. We'll put all the show notes. We'll put all the links in the show notes. But go ahead and do your closing, Jaren.
Yeah, it was awesome being on your show. I listened to 2 or 3 of your shows this week and really enjoyed them. Enjoyed the humor and enjoyed the list. They were really good, so I was happy to be a part of it. And like what you guys are doing. Appreciate you having us on, and would love to be back whenever you'll have us.
I think we're going to have a lot of follow-up
Awesome.
with you guys. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we appreciate it as well. David from DITRH YouTube channel and the Flat Earth podcast. Do you want to do any closing as well?
Sure. My YouTube channel, DITRH, stands for Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, has lots of short videos for people that are like, oh, what is this nonsense? So you go to my channel. Most of my videos are under 5 minutes. And the purpose of them is to show you something that you haven't thought of and get you willing to watch a longer video. I highly recommend Jaren's channel for lots of stuff on NASA. He's very thought out and researched and does great production. There's a bunch of other great channels out there. ODD Reality, or ODD TV. I think it's ODD Reality is the name of his show. And I've recently started a new podcast with another YouTuber called Curious Jay called The Flat Earth Podcast, because there's really nothing in the podcast realm that's audio only that you can subscribe to on any podcast player and get notified when new episodes come out. It's an hour show, and we talk about all things flat Earth, and it's for experienced flat earthers and definitely people that have no idea that flat Earth is even a thing. All the links to my social media is on theflatearthpodcast.com.
Awesome.
Very cool, guys. We greatly appreciate you coming in. I know you're up against a hard stop. We're going to still do some closing notes on the show. You're more than welcome to hang out. I know you guys have something coming up. Don't worry, we're not bashing any names or anything like that. That's not the intent.
Jaren, you can go. I'll keep an eye on these guys.
I believe I'm used to being bashed.
I know. I think Jaren, before you hang up, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And it takes a lot of balls to come and do something like this.
Yeah,
and sharing your word that's very controversial, especially in today's heightened attention on it. For some reason, it's become hot again. Thank you for being brave and coming on our show and having some fun with us. We appreciate it, Jaren.
No problem, and would love to come back because I'm just looking for the truth. And if the truth is that we live on a globe, then I've just been looking for proof of that, and it's been 2.5 years, and I'm going the other direction. I'm seeing more and more reasons not to believe in it. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jaren. All right, David, you're going to hang on the show with us?
Sure.
All right, cool deal. All right, so final takeaways, guys. This is we didn't have a lot of time to actually do a debate style show, and I knew that because these guys had limited time, and we also try to keep our show less than a 2-hour show.
Right.
So it wasn't going to be a lot of debate between questions. But what are you guys' takeaways? I mean, Jaren and David both came with unique perspectives, and that's kind of the point of the show.
And they see they're intelligent. I've seen some YouTube videos where they're not so intelligent, but these guys are. They're very intelligent. They've definitely done their homework, and so that's why I like. This is our second show with them, and I enjoy with them because they always got something coming back, and that's great. I think it's awesome.
I just like to point out, a lot of people go, where are you getting your information on YouTube? Well, people watch SpaceX on YouTube and they buy that,
I just gave you a prop, man.
Find something that's
now you're
not on YouTube. Sorry about that, but find something that's not on YouTube. Everything is on YouTube. It's kind of like life. Everything is in life. YouTube is just a platform that serves us information, and then you have to use your discernment. If I tell you that the Earth is flat and you believe me, you're an idiot. All right, you have to go look and realize it for yourself. The way I became a flat earther was so many people were poking me to look at it, and finally I said, I gotta prove this wrong, and I went in to disprove it. And anybody that seriously does that with no ego and willing to learn new information where their job doesn't depend on it, you'll come out a flat earther on the other side.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I got to say, one of the things I appreciate more than anything is the fact that you push that whole question, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out there. You do push that question, and I like that. It's, question what you're told. Don't just take anything at face value just because some fifth grade teacher told you something when you were in fifth grade. That doesn't necessarily make it true. Question it, look into it, and make your own conclusions based on what you find. I can't argue against that. I think that's the whole point of everything. So I like that you bring the other end of our argument to it, but I do appreciate the fact that you guys have looked into it. I think that's fantastic, and I wish more people would do that.
The people that defend the heliocentric ball, I'll take you guys out of it. Most of them have no idea of any of the supposed facts of it. They don't know how far the sun is. They don't even know that a lot of people think that the phases of the moon are caused by the Earth. They don't understand anything. They've just been told, in kindergarten, you're brought up to the globe and you're shown where you live. All of Disney cartoons, Sesame Street, it's all Ball Earth programming. There's a video on my channel called Flat Earth and the Yip Yaps or something like that. That'll find it. And if you watch that, it's horrific how they're indoctrinating babies into Ball Earth thinking.
Interesting. I do want to add something real quick. I said this at the beginning of the podcast. I'm going to say it again. My voice is starting to get gone for some reason, so I apologize for coughing. However, so Tach and I work for the Space Center. I do want to add a caveat into this podcast to make sure that the listeners understand we are not representatives of NASA and or SpaceX here. Correct. We're our own individuals in our own minds. So what you hear from us is from us during this show and not necessarily from SpaceX. And I think that probably also goes with the rest of the cast, that they represent themselves and not the companies they're employed with or the schools and education systems they come from. Unless Derek wants to say, I represent University of Florida, but that's entirely up to him.
And I appreciate the fact that you guys are coming on here willing to have this conversation. We're only asking that the spokesmen for science, the ones that do represent science,
Sure.
Neil and Bill, that they actually have a conversation rather than drop unsupported dogma on everybody.
You guys have your quibs prepped, man. Unsupported dogma.
Well, I actually held back because I call him Neil the Ass Tyson and Bill Lie.
Yeah, Bill
and
Lie.
I was trying to be nice.
Derek, do you have some follow-up you want to do?
Yeah, I do. I do want to, at the very least, say that the list you came up with are things that could be verified. I mean, the Earth's spin, we'll leave that one alone. But, things like a video of the Earth from the moon and SpaceX landings, those are actually tangible things, so long as we take data and you guys agree that the data we present to you has not been falsified.
Yeah, David, the hardest part here is not asking for you to believe that we're going to give you proof, but for you to be sure and validate the proof that we can possibly provide. It's whether or not you believe it or not is really where the question is going to come in. Because if we do all this research, spend all this money, and get this perfect video, and then you to say, "No, that could have been Photoshop. Thanks, next." That would kill us.
You know what? You can always Photoshop. There are tools that you can figure out if something has been Photoshopped. There's a program called Photo Forensics. There's a YouTube channel called Paul on the Plane, who has proven, not theorized, that the Himawari, if I could say that correctly, satellite images of Earth that come like every 15 minutes are 100% faked. And he proves this in 2 or 3 short videos. Paul on the Plane.
Yeah, I know which ones you're talking about. And just to defend that, there's no satellite in a geostationary orbit that has an ability to capture the entire Earth, so it has to be photoshopped together. I've seen those before. It's
composites.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I know both sides of that argument. I can see both sides. But yeah.
we have a spaceship that is whizzing by Pluto and can get a full shot of it.
Well, that's what it was designed for. You'd have to design a spacecraft and get funding for it specifically to do that.
So again, any place that we can't go, which is up in the sky, you can say anything you want and you can support it, and there's no way we can disprove it. But we live here on the Earth, and we can have observations here. Show us the Earth from the moon, and there's no reason that you can't or aren't able to or won't do it, other than that you can't do it. So show us the Earth, and you can't fake it. You show us the Earth with weather patterns and everything. There's only one video, maybe there's another one, but there's one video of the 24 hours of the Earth spinning. And as the clouds come around, they're in the exact same shape as they were 24 hours ago. You've all seen time-lapse, 5, 10, 20-minute time-lapse of clouds.
Yeah.
They morph rapidly. It shows the Earth spinning and the clouds staying perfectly still. We can all agree that's fake. Show us the Earth spinning from space.
Yeah, Derek's got a look on his face in studio. I know what David is referencing. There have been productions in the past that have been published for mass consumption that have had photoshopped images of the same cloud patterns.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that too.
That's happened. It's not that hasn't happened, but that doesn't justify, not believing in certain doctrine that we're taught. But okay, cool. Let's get through this. David, number one, I want to thank you for coming on. Again, like I told Jaren, it takes a lot of balls to come and do something like this. We took it relatively easy as far as from the antagonist point of view, only because you're our guests and we don't want to make it a debate. It wasn't supposed to be an argument from the beginning. We wanted you guys to share your message with our listeners, and we also wanted to get a little exposure to your guys' listeners because I know you have a lot. So we appreciate you coming on. It's awesome. We don't necessarily, because of this show, we don't necessarily agree with your perspective, but at least we got educated on your perspective, and that's kind of the point here. So thank you very much for coming on tonight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having us on. It was a pleasure. You guys are great. What we try to do is you don't know to research something until you know it's something. So we're trying to put the ideas out there so you can look into it yourself. I would have never even have thought of looking into this until I was forced to, until I was shown that there are unanswered questions. There are things that don't make sense. You know, another researcher in a conversation I was having, we were talking about how there's so many deceptions in the world, and she just threw up her hands and she said, you know, for all I know, the Earth isn't a globe. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I'm having issues with the globe, and that's what got me to start looking into it. And otherwise, I would never look. So there you go.
All right. Well, very good. All right, we're going to close out our show. So let's first of all go around our room in here and thank our folks in here. Derek, first of all, a good friend of ours. We appreciate you coming down and offering some of the logical, more accepted perspective into the science realm. We appreciate you coming down and doing that. And we're going to be sure to call you back as a future expert in the future as well. So do you have anything you want to plug or send any of our listeners to go see you or support you or support any effort or cause that you're interested in?
Stay in school.
Stay in school.
All right.
Very good.
That's good advice.
All right. Jay, you got any locations you're going to be out here recently?
Recently or in the future?
Or in the future, yeah. We're going to talk a little bit on Living Podcariously about coming out to see you at Gregory's this past weekend.
Funny you should bring that up. I'm actually going to be back in Gregory's next week.
Nice.
I will be there again hosting on August 10th, 11th, and 12th. You can come catch me with a couple of other comics and come have a good time. Also, I'll be guesting on the Burn It Down show.
Yes.
Coming up in a couple of weeks. That'll be August 26th. So more to come on that one. Also, catch me on Pops On, my other show with Raul. Now available on iTunes. We just got that official email and Apple and Google Play.
Nice.
So
Nice, dude.
movement is a happening.
Very nice.
Right.
Andrea, where can our listeners come see you?
I'll be at Brent Allen Salon in Day Spa.
All right. And you give a special discount for any of our listeners?
Happy endings.
Yes.
Yay!
All right, and you can follow us on Twitter at the Twisted 10. You can also follow us on our Instagram as well, and Facebook and YouTube channel with the Dichotomy Media Podcast LLC.
That's right. Also, go check out Patreon, patreon.com/thetwisted10. We've got our first donor up there. We're receiving $1 a month, guys. We're there. We've made it.
Yeah, we are officially getting paid. It'll only take 4 months for all of us to make a buck.
4 months.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up the show. David, we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any of our listeners that want to see any of their information for both David and Jaren, check out the show notes of this episode, or go check out their YouTube channels, DITRH YouTube channel, the Flat Earth Podcast, and Jarenism on YouTube. Again,
The FlatEarthPodcast.com is where all the links are to that.
There you go. Very nice.
On iTunes, on Android, it's everywhere. Just download your favorite podcast app. And I have a final note to your listeners.
Sure.
If you choose to stay in school, which I do not recommend, question everything.
Nice.
Well, that's good advice, too.
Awesome, David. We appreciate you guys being good sports and coming on here. Thank you very much for doing it. And for our listeners, thank you so much for listening to us. We appreciate it, and we will see you guys next week.